What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to another Black Desert video. So today I want to do my yearly update on this video. 10 mistakes that I made in BDO. And as we all know, the game has changed a lot since 2016. It even changed a lot from 2024 all the way to 2025. So every year I like to do an update, and whether you're a new player or not, there are some things that I think would be very helpful, especially to people who are just starting out the game and you watch like an old guide or something and turns out that information is not even relevant anymore. So I made a little list of 10 things that I didn't do when I first started the game and I wish I knew, like starting now, are in no particular order. I actually have a lot more than 10, but I just chose 10, somewhat important and relevant things that I think would still be relevant today. Is 1, stop doing gear roulettes. And if you don't know what that means, it's like, imagine all your gear is at like Tet, right? And you're going for your first ever pen. You like click all of them and hope for the best that one goes. Like the best outcome is you hit it on the first go and then all your gear is safe. What usually happens is everything downgrades and suddenly you're like, I don't know, a few weeks or a couple of months behind in progress from what you were used to. And the way I would enhance gear, obviously they have gone in the direction of more cron stones. So that means everything is like more or less safer as just cron click everything. But if you don't want to use those and you're like not at the super end game where it's more mandatory to do it, one thing I would recommend to all of you for gear upgrading is work on one piece of gear at a time. So like, let's say all of your, I don't know, Fallen God armors are at Tri and you want to go for a Tet. Just work on one piece at a time instead of just slamming them, all of them. And it's actually insane how much silver you could lose by doing that. So yeah, on seasonal characters, it's a little bit different when you're going for like Tuvala, and maybe not up to the higher tiers, but up until like Pen or something. That's when people are usually just, clicking on random stacks and it's no big deal. That's not really, even then, it's not a good idea to do that, but when the consequence isn't too bad of failing there, it's okay. But once you get to like real gear, when you see how much silver it costs to enhance, yeah, just don't do that. My advice to you, either buy your gear, work on it one piece at a time, or, just cron everything, and it's less painful doing that way. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, one mistake I made when I was a newer player was reselling gear to buy upgrades. So I guess it doesn't really matter so much now if you are an endgame player, because sovereign weapons and Karazods couldn't even be sold. But we still do have some gear that, still has a price value on the market. So like, Monos gear, life skill stuff. However, one thing that I saw a lot of people do, and I did it, but I wasn't like doing it for every piece of gear, is back when like black stars were the relevant thing, and I guess to an extent they still are for like up until going into endgame. But like, you remember how everyone wanted a pen black star, and let's say you have a Tet, you're like, oh, should I sell my earring or something so I can get this upgrade and then I'll buy my earring back later? Just know that there's market tax in the game, and so you should never sell a piece of gear that you're gonna have to buy later again, simply because, one, the market for this game is very event driven. That means like, they might just randomly give us an event that can get you that item again in a week or two. So even if it is an upgrade to a more or less relevant item, it's always better to still not sell gear that you have to get back eventually, because going down in your AP and DP really does affect how you play. So like if you drop a lot of AP or DP, maybe you can't grind the same spot anymore. So yeah, my advice to you, if you like randomly hit a good piece of gear and you're like, oh, that's a 200 billion silver or something, should I sell it? No, the answer is chances are you're gonna need it eventually. It's probably better. And some people are like, oh, I can get more gear score. No, like if you hit something that's worth a lot, there's a reason why it's worth a lot, because it's hard to get. So just keep your gear and work on the other ones later. The next tip I can give to all of you is using optimal fail stacks when enhancing. So as we all know, once you get to the end game, there are pieces of gear that you cannot just straight up buy off the market, like Sovereign and Karazad. To an extent, you can't buy them at the highest tier anymore. You can buy them close to it, but one thing I would recommend to you guys, which they added a few years in the game, is learning how to use the adventurer's choice thing. So what does this mean? We're using my Sovereign weapon, for example. So how do you read this, and what is it? So they introduced this into the game, you know, probably about a year or so ago, and it's essentially like a collective data of all the successes people have had enhancing the exact same item. So how do you read it? Okay, so people usually hit their item, as in the item succeeded the enhance on these stacks. Now, it doesn't always mean you should use the highest number that they choose, simply because people generally start on like a 305, for example, and then it fails all the way up to a 320 or a 324, and then that's when they get it. I guess this might be a little bit of a bad example because this is an endgame item, but accessories work a little bit different, like non-Karazad, and there are optimal stacks that are like soft caps, essentially. And although it would take forever to actually tell you guys what to use on every specific item, if you do need help, just leave it in the comments and join the Discord. I'm happy to specifically help you guys. But as a general collective, what this thingy is what people succeed their click on, not what they started on, essentially. That's an average. So yeah, just like take what you think is a good number, and even if it's lower, that's fine, but just know how to read it, that's all. The next thing I want to talk about is setting up nodes and workers early. So this is more of a beginner thing, and when I first started this game, I was actually really confused. So like, if you were to see this as a newer player, you're like, what is all that? This is confusing. I don't know what I'm looking at. So first of all, I know a lot of people don't actually use these tabs over here. I'm not even sure if all of these are on by default, but if they aren't, you just click them and it shows you more. So basically, once you get to a point in the game where you understand like what everything is, you could use all of these, and I'm pretty sure that no one actually uses this. I don't even know if this thing even works in the game, I'm gonna be honest with you. So the important things that you should look at are probably node information. This basically covers up a lot of the useless stuff. Node wars, if you are PvPers, this allows you to pick the node in the region you want. So, and then I believe the intentions for all of this was for like farming, and obviously your crops grow better in certain climate regions. Makes sense, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't actually look at this ever. So yeah, I think the ones you should look for are node and product. And yeah, set up your workers early. It's essentially passive income. You set up your workers and on a certain node, and then they bring stuff back, and then all your materials, you can either sell it, use it, or, you know, just leave it there. It's free money when you decide you want to do something with it. So if you don't have it set up and you're a new player, start learning this really early because it's free money as long as you're playing the game. The next thing I want to talk about is using buffs in PvP and PvE. Now, this is something I see a lot of newer players not do, and this is actually one of the things that I was like, oh, when I was a new player, for example, I looked at, you know, an item and it's like, oh, that's 30 mil to use and it only lasts 20 minutes. do I even make that much silver to cover the buffs? And when you're an endgame player, you look at all the buffs that people use, and it's like everything costs like what, 200 mil an hour to use or something. And that may sound like a lot, but when you see how much silver people are getting at endgame and grinding an hour, it's billions. So will you make a profit by using buffs? Chances are you will, assuming you're grinding in a relevant spot to the buff like difficulty and everything. But also like buffs in general just allow you to clear faster, do more damage, not die. And so is it worth it? Absolutely. Will you make the silver back? Yes, you will. So I think it is worth using, including loot scrolls at most spots. So, yep, that's something I see newer players just not do because they're like, oh, it's too expensive. Trust me when I say, on average, or I guess 99% of you will make the amount of silver you are using in buffs back in your grind spot, or even PvP. That's especially important in PvP. The next thing I wanted to talk about is joining guilds. Now, we all know Black Desert is mostly a solo game. That means whatever you're doing, chances are you're playing by yourself about 95% of the time. And I know some people come into the game and just like, I just want to do my own thing. I don't want to talk to other people, and completely understand that. It is an MMO, like, you know, massively multiplayer game. You talk to other people, interact with everything. But there are benefits of actually joining guilds. So, for example, you get to do guild missions, and then like guild missions reward your guild silver. Your guild does payouts and everything. The most important thing is there are guild buffs, and whether you are a PvPer, PvEer, life skiller, role player, there's always some guild for you. So no matter what you're doing, just look for a guild that does that. But the important thing is being in a guild gives you, your character, buffs. And so like all of these things, it's just passive stats by being in a guild. I would say most guilds have it unless you're completely new, but I would say most guilds just in general have it. So yeah, just being in a guild gives you free stats. Of course, like the most important reason is to join a guild is, you know, social interaction, find new friends and all that stuff. But even if you don't do that, just join the guild for various buffs. Cool. The next thing I want to talk about is using your energy and not overcapping. So you see this number over here? This is your energy. This is your energy pool, and this is how much energy you have currently. And as we all know, energy is mostly connected to life skills, and there's a lot you could do with it. So energy equals silver in some sense, because you could turn that energy into like an item and then sell it, or you can like gather, do whatever, and also make more silver out of it. So the number one tip for that is never let your energy cap. And when you do, you're not getting any more energy. Therefore, you are losing out on passive silver. So one tip that I can give to you guys is, you see how this is my silver, or not silver, energy number right now, 617. One thing I would recommend to put on all your characters that you don't play is this crystal setup. Well, not really a setup, but have magic crystals of infinity energy. So it gives you 10 energy, and you can have 2 crystals in. So if I equip it, suddenly my energy is 637. Now, what's cool about this is if you put them on your other characters that you aren't actively playing. So like, let's say you play a character for your seasonal and you just don't like it, but you don't want to delete the character. Put some energy on it, put it in a town or something. Your energy cap will be the new number with the plus 20, not your old one. And so as the number fills up, you just do something with it, and it's just plus 20 passively. So yeah, that's a tip that I could give all of you guys. Not many people actually do that, but is it a big deal? Plus 20 energy? Not really, but it's, if you're trying to like, you know, squeeze out a few extra million, then it is worth it. Just make sure to swap it out again if you're actually playing it and all that stuff. And user energy. The best way to use it, probably go gathering or turn them into energy potions. So let me give you an example. Here's where you turn it into energy. This NPC right here, Aliston, you probably talked to him when you first started the game. This dude, you exchange, you can buy energy potions and trade 200 for another one, but that 50 energy, you can sell it to the market. Is it efficient? Not really. Are you better off doing anything else? Probably. And so either way, whatever you do, just try not to let your energy cap, and or at least use it as regularly as you can. The next thing I would tell people, or the next tip or mistake, is when I first started this game, I tried to do every single quest in this game. And as an MMO, you know, there are literally tens, if not hundreds of thousands of quests to do. And if you don't really have a plan, or you're just trying to do literally every side quest, it's probably going to burn you out. Yes, I know there is a achievement thingy in this game to do like 100,000 quests. Keep in mind, most of those are just tedious things that you do like when you're already at the end game. So as a newer player, here's what I'd recommend to all of you guys. Do your main quests. This is a little bit different because I did everything when it came out, and then they're like, oh, let's do a remaster of every single quest line, and I'm just like, oh, I already did it like 7 times on my other characters. Do I want to do it again? No. I probably am going to do it eventually, but either way, do the main story. You're playing an MMO, mostly probably for the story. And then after this, the suggested tab, some of these give, you know, pretty decent and relevant items, so make sure to do some of them. Trust me, there's a lot of them. And reoccurring are like weeklies and dailies. So if there's anything you want to do, is at least try to do as much of the main story. Look at all this. It's like all these tabs. Realistically, I have pretty much done like everything except for the remastered versions of them. But yeah, you don't have to do every quest. Just do what you think is fun. Do the ones that actually give you relevant things. Yes, I know there's adventure journals too. That one's a whole new story. These are kind of tedious, but they also give you like family stats. So these are worth doing, absolutely. Is it fun? No. You have to do it though. But you just do them at your own pace. So that's about it. It's a game at the end of the day. Another tip, I think number 9 that I want to talk to you guys about is character rerolling. So this isn't exactly a bad thing. It's just more like of an efficiency standpoint. And they've tried to close the gap on people who like to reroll a lot. So as we all know, there's like how many characters is this? Like 35 characters total or something. And there's like 28, 29 classes. So of course everyone is going to want to try the new one. BDO balance is a whole nother issue in general. But if you guys want to play all the characters, we have a thing called the tag system here, right? So you can tag a character, and essentially your tagged character gets the equivalent gear of your main. So that's one way they kind of countered it, and I wish you could be able to tag multiple characters, like at least 2 or 3, but it's a new story. Essentially, when you're re-rolling a lot, it takes time to learn a new character. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I just think, like, let's say you grind a spot and you do fine at that spot, right? And you're making, I don't know, 2 billion silver an hour. Now suddenly you re-roll to a new character that you don't know as well, try that same spot, and you're making like 1 bill an hour. That's an efficiency loss. Ultimately, I think the best thing to do is like do what you think is fun. At the end of the day, like, this is a video game. But if you just want to do everything optimally, either play the thing that you know how to do the best. Even if your character isn't the best, if you can do something well, it's usually more effective than doing something not as well. So yeah, character rerolling will drop your efficiency, and you might you know, just not do as well for a little bit. But I don't think it's a bad thing, or I don't think it's a mistake to do it. You just play what you want, do what you think is fun, but just know that consistent rerolls is like kind of using a lot of silver and everything. So just make sure progress is up, not down, if that makes sense. And number 10, the next tip and the last one I wanted to talk about today is don't compare yourself to others. I've talked about this in another video before, but BDO is a little bit of a different game than, you know, other MMOs. Like, for example, I don't know, World of Warcraft. Let's use that one as an example because everyone's heard of it. So in World of Warcraft, your ultimate goal is to get max level, do the end game dungeons, trials, whatever, get the best gear, and then you kind of just wait until the next expansion, and then you do it again. So in BDO, your gear doesn't really get, you know, washed away every season or new expansion. The way they do it is like you get the gear and then you upgrade from a path towards that one. And like the gear like that I have now, it will still be relevant in like 1 year or so. And the way they transitioned, like for example, Black Stars to Sovereign and Deberekas to Karazad, what you had will upgrade into a new version. So having the old gear doesn't necessarily mean it's outdated. And I think they've done a pretty good job at, you know, upgrading it to a relevant thing. So you're still ahead every year. And when I say don't compare yourself to others, this is one mistake that I made when I first started this game. I started with one of my friends, and our goal, we came from another MMO, that, you know, traditional one. And our goal was to say, ooh, who can get the most gear first? Now I support competition in video games, right? Like, obviously it feels good to get more gear than your friends, right? Or do better in, you know, PvP or whatever. But the real truth is in BDO, like, the person who plays the most just is better. Not necessarily combat wise, but just like you'll have more resources. But also with a little bit of RNG, if you hit like a good enhanced, like a 5%, you're literally like at least a week or two ahead of, you know, other people just by one gear enhance. So suddenly that is less fun when you're like, oh, my friend just hit this piece of gear and I don't. So my best tip would be to play this game at your own pace, and just overall, like, for the most part, this is a sandbox game. Do whatever you enjoy doing. Obviously, playing optimally and efficiency will always be better, but there's a lot of things to do. Just do what you think is fun, and your end goal is all the same: to get the best gear at whatever you're doing, life skilling, PvPing, PvEing, and you'll get there eventually. So yeah, that's ultimately the 10 mistakes and 10 things that I wish I knew earlier when I started the game versus where I am now. So yeah, hopefully that was pretty informative. There's a lot more mistakes that I made when I started this game. So if you enjoyed it, drop a like, let me know, and maybe I'll do a part 2. But yeah, I think these are still relevant to this day, and yeah, that's about it. So with that said, thanks so much for watching. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Would love to see you guys come back. Also, before I wrap up, I just wanted to let you guys know I do have a code for PC and NA and EU. It lasts until January 29th, at least that's what they told me. And so if you just want some free goodies, my birthday was a few days ago, so that lasts for a few more days. Check it out. And with that said, I'll see you guys later. Peace.